I guess I just can't get over that childhood of yours. The little scraps I've read about it, sitting at tables at your age with people who were, well, in other countries for one thing, but sometimes world leaders, I suppose. Or were there any world leaders?
Oh yes, the world leader that really came to nothing, as far as my memory is concerned, was Hitler. I was being escorted. I went twice through the Tyrol and Austrian German hiking country. Once with one teacher and once with another. And one of the two teachers was, it turned out, a sort of a budding Nazi. And there was a big Nazi rally near Innsbruck. In the days when the Nazis were just a very comical kind of minority party of nuts that nobody took seriously at all, except my hiking companion, this gentleman and his knapsack, and he wangled a place at the table with the great men of this tiny little party of cranks. And I remember very well afterwards, Stryker, who was the leader of the big anti-Semitic campaigns, and 2 or 3 other well-known people to this day. The man sitting next to me was Hitler, and he made so little impression on me that I can't remember a second of it.
Gee.
He had no personality whatsoever.
Wonder if
he was invisible.
I wonder if under hypnosis it would come out.
No, I think there was nothing there that anybody'd remember till you had 5,000 people yelling, "Sieg Heil," Heil Hitler. That's the whole point of the story, that there wasn't anything to remember.
What about those films that were made about him by Leni, Riefenstahl?
Pretty good films.
Are they you often hear that
they are awfully well made, yes.
Is she alive?
Yes.
Have you met her?
No, I haven't met her. But she's living, I think, in England or some place like that, and hustling around trying to get, to flog a documentary here and there on almost any subject.
Gee, interesting thing.
I never met Stalin. I never met Stalin, but Roosevelt I knew very well, and Churchill, and lots of, during childhood and then youth, of course. I was very lucky in that respect.
What age were you when you were orphaned?
Well, my mother died when I was 7, and my father died when I was 15, beginning of my 15th birthday. Then I ran away, tried to stay out of school, out of Harvard. I had a scholarship, and desperate not to be educated, I went into the theater. I made it. I wasn't educated.
What if you were now? I mean, what if you wanted to go to school? Do you have any idea what you want to study now?
Gee, that's a good question. Everything, I guess. But if I wanted to study seriously, and get good at a subject, I think it would be anthropology. Don't you think that's a fascinating subject?
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe I would too. I don't know. Or maybe philosophy. I never thought about it very much.
I'm suspicious of philosophy. I have a real Philistine doubt about its worth, but anthropology seems to me to be just at its beginnings, and philosophy kind of at its end.
Who else stands out from that time in your life? What faces come to mind?
Well, you mean famous ones?
Sure, or infamous,
yes,
or not famous, or any of that.
Well, we had Schicklgruber, but wonderful people that aren't famous. I guess one of the most remarkable people I ever knew was somebody called Cornelia Lunt. And Alfred Lunt used to pretend to be her cousin. They weren't related at all. They loved each other. And she was, when I knew her, in her middle 90s, and had been a hostess of great importance, although very young, in the Civil War in America, and knew intimately all the great names of the Civil War. I could tell you all about what Lincoln said and what my great-grandfather Gideon Welles said, who was Secretary of Navy in the Cabinet. And she was a great kind of raconteur on the Civil War. And then she went over to London, where she was at the American Embassy, and where she knew everybody in England. All those fabulous people that seemed to have been dead for 200 years, in the Victorian age. And it was, you could only get her to tell about these things with great difficulty. She didn't go on and on like I do. You had to drag it out of her, and she was delicious. She was an old lady who, when she gave a big party, sat on a little stool, and she gave you a big chair. If you can imagine an old lady like that. She was very beautiful. Must have been not so beautiful when she was young, but one of those people that old age glorifies. And she had a little bell. And when she wanted everybody to be quiet so she could say something, she'd ring her bell. And then we'd all be quiet, and she'd make her little statement, then ring it again, and everybody could talk again. And she's one of the great people I've known, you know, as great, certainly, as Churchill or Roosevelt or George Marshall, and I suppose Marshall is the greatest man I ever met.
Really?
Yes, I would think so.
What would you admire about him above everybody else?
Human being. I think he's the greatest human being who was also a great man, who I was ever privileged to meet.
Have you known some that were...
Can I tell a little story about him?
Certainly.
We'd been campaigning for Roosevelt, not George Marshall, but some of the rest of us, and one of our rewards when he got in again, one of those many times that he did, was to go to a big party, a very big brass, and sit on the dais and be treated as though we were part of the high command, just for one night. And there were all these tremendous names from the Second World War. 2 or 3 civilians. Truman, the vice president, who was playing the piano. We were rather embarrassed about that because he didn't seem to be awfully good on the piano. And we didn't know that he was going to be a great president, you see.
I see.
And it didn't look as though he did either, as a matter of fact. But he and so there were only about 4 or 5 civilians. All the rest were tremendous brass, dripping with gold, braid and medals and everything else. And it was in the Mayflower Hotel in Washington. And a door opened. And GI, more innocent looking than anything you could possibly imagine and younger than anything you could dream of, stuck his head in. At the moment when General Marshall happened to look toward the door, and the boy looked at him, he said, "Gee, General Marshall, can I come in and say hello to you?" Marshall said, "Yeah, come in." And Marshall didn't know anybody was watching. This wasn't a grandstand play. I was in a position, my camera was angled, so he didn't know he was getting photographed in anybody's film of memory.
Yeah.
And he took the boy aside, away from everybody, and sat down with him. And I heard as he went that the boy had been away from home. And the boy recognized Marshall as somebody like a family. Now, this was the commander of all the Allied forces. And he sat with this boy without any grandstanding at all, and just put him at ease and made him feel at home again for half an hour and left all the rest of us. He was that kind of fellow.
I wonder what the difference is between a man like that and the ones who are impressive publicly but couldn't be bothered to talk to anyone that isn't important to them or flattered.
Well, I don't know. Those kind of people are all second-rate, who can't be bothered at all, ever. Yeah. But there are those who can't be bothered sometimes. You know, and that's... You had a feeling with Marshall that if it were possible to be bothered, he would let himself be bothered. He was a tremendous gentleman, you know, an old-fashioned institution which isn't with us anymore.
You almost never want to ask anyone the question who's impressed you the most, and it's wonderful to have a guest who can give you the answer.
Well, I never do know the answers to those kind of
They're
questions,
hard,
you know, but I just happen to know that one. Yeah. Of course, I was immensely impressed with Churchill, but he was quite another thing, you know. He had great humor and great irony. He went to see me when I played Othello on the stage in London, and I heard a low murmuring in the front row. I thought he was talking to himself, and then he came backstage afterwards and sat down in the dressing room and said, "Most potent, grave, and reverend signors, my most approved good masters," and began the whole of Othello's part, which he had memorized, and including the cuts which I had made, which he read with a good deal of extra emphasis. And then a few years afterwards, I happened to be in Venice trying to get some money for a movie during the festival, and poor Churchill had been, right after the war, as you know, crest of the greatest victory that any single man had ever presided over in modern history, was voted out of office. Quite properly, probably, but it was a tragic blow for him. And there he was in the hotel at the Lido with Clemmy, his wife, alone. And he'd go swimming out on the beach. And one day at lunch, I came in with a Russian businessman I was trying to hustle for some money for this picture. And as we passed Mr. Churchill's table, Mr. Churchill saw me and made that little gesture, and the Russian went out of his mind. This is a white Russian, not a red Russian. This is a you know, a hustling, semi-Armenian Russian. And when he saw that Mr. Churchill not only knew me, but gave a rather special acknowledgement, it was clear to me that I had the money for my picture. So the next morning I was out swimming in the beach, and I found myself paddling in the water right next to Mr. Churchill. And I hadn't gone up to speak to him, but there we were in the water, and I had known him on and off during the war in a humble capacity, and I said, and he had come backstage to see me, and I said, Mr. Churchill, I think you ought to know what you did for me. And I told him about how this acknowledgement had meant so much to me with my financier. And that day at lunch, I came in with the financier again, and Mr. Churchill rose from his chair and bowed.
That is good.
Pretty good,
That's
huh?
good. We'll be back after this music.